poor fisherman pulled his nets from the river, expecting his usual small catch. But instead, he found a heavy suitcase. What lay inside would not only change his life, it would change the fate of his entire village forever. The man's name was Karim. He lived in a small, forgotten village by the edge of a wide river. His house was no more than a mud hut, with a roof patched together from old tin sheets and straw. Every time it rained, water dripped inside, soaking the floor where his children slept. Karim had been a fisherman since he was a boy. His father had taught him how to cast a net into the river, how to read the water's flow, and how to wait patiently for the fish. But those were different times. Back then, the river had been generous. Fish swam in plenty, and Karim's family never went hungry. Now, things were harder. The river had grown empty, the fish fewer each year. Big fishing companies had moved upstream with their machines, scooping out the river's wealth before it could reach Karim's little nets. What was left for him were scraps, tiny fish that barely sold for a few coins. Each morning, Karim woke before sunrise. His stomach often empty, he pushed his tired old boat into the water. The wood creaked under his feet, and the oars felt heavier with each passing day. His nets were full of holes, stitched again and again with thin rope. He promised himself he would buy new ones someday, but that day never came. When Karim returned from the river, his children often ran out to meet him. They looked into his basket with wide, hopeful eyes. But most days, their faces fell in disappointment. Only a handful of small fish lay there, not enough to fill their stomachs. His wife, Amina, would take them inside, quietly cutting and stretching what little food they had, so everyone could eat at least something. Many nights, she went hungry herself, so her children could eat first. The village shopkeeper kept a list of Karim's debts. Karim hated looking at that long sheet of paper whenever he walked in. Oil, rice, flour, all borrowed, never paid in full. Each time, the shopkeeper sighed, shaking his head and said, "Pay me when you can." Those words cut deeper than any insult, because Karim knew the man no longer believed he would ever pay. Still, Karim never gave up. He carried his father's words in his heart. The river always gives back, even if it takes time. Be patient, son. Be honest. Your hands may be empty today, but they will not always remain so. Those words were the only reason he kept going. Day after day, cast after cast, Karim fought against the emptiness of the river and the heaviness in his chest. But deep inside, even he sometimes wondered, would his luck ever change? And then came the day when the river finally answered. It was early morning, the air cool and damp with mist, when Karim pushed his little boat into the water. His arms ached from the day before, but he rowed quietly, listening to the gentle splash of the oars. He found his usual spot in the middle of the river, where the water was deep and calm, and threw his worn net out with a sigh. Minutes passed, then an hour. Nothing. The river seemed empty, just as it had been all week. Karim pulled the net back in and tossed it out again, hoping luck might change. This time, something felt different. The net sank fast and heavy, pulling at his hands with a force that made his muscles strain. His heart leapt. Finally, perhaps a big fish, or even several at once. He gripped the ropes tighter, his breath quickening as he began to haul it in. But the weight was uneven, dragging to one side, and there was no movement, no thrashing. Fish always fought. This thing was still, stubborn, and oddly solid. Karim frowned, pulling harder, his hands burning from the rough rope. The old boat tilted dangerously under the strain. Finally, with one last heave, he dragged the net up and over the edge. Water splashed everywhere as something bulky and rectangular thudded onto the wooden floorboards. It wasn't fish at all. It was a suitcase. The leather was dark and worn, swollen from water. Metal latches glinted faintly in the morning light. It looked old, yet strangely intact, as if it had been hiding in the river for years, waiting to be found. Karim blinked in disbelief. A suitcase? Here? He almost laughed. He had prayed for fish, and the river had given him someone's lost baggage. What use was this to him? He thought about tossing it back in. Surely it was filled with nothing but ruined clothes, maybe mud, maybe garbage. But then, he heard it. A faint clink from inside. Metal on metal. His heart paused. Slowly, carefully, he bent down and ran his fingers along the latches. They were stiff, but with a sharp pull, one snapped open, then the other. Karim hesitated. His breath caught in his throat. Whatever was inside this suitcase, trash or treasure, was about to change everything. For a long moment, Karim just sat there, staring at the suitcase. His fingers trembled slightly as he lifted the lid, half expecting it to be stuffed with nothing but soggy clothes or useless papers. But when the hinges finally creaked open, his eyes widened. Inside, beneath a thin layer of damp cloth, lay bundles wrapped in faded leather and cloth pouches. Carefully, he reached for the nearest one and untied it. His breath caught. Gold coins, heavy and gleaming even in the pale morning light. His hands shook as he picked one up, turning it between his fingers. It was old, with strange markings he didn't recognize. It wasn't just money. It was history. He pulled aside another pouch, this one heavier. When he opened it, gemstones tumbled into his palm. Sapphires, emeralds, small diamonds that glittered like drops of frozen fire. Karim gasped, his heart pounding so hard he thought the sound would echo across the river. For years, he had struggled to catch enough fish to feed his family. And here, right in front of him, was more wealth than he had ever dreamed of. His first thought was disbelief. Surely this was impossible. How could such treasure end up here in his small river? Then came fear. What if someone had hidden it? What if it belonged to dangerous people and they came back for it? He looked over his shoulder at the silent banks. Nobody in sight. Just the fog, curling low over the water, and the sound of the river lapping against his boat. Karim swallowed hard, then pulled out another bundle. This one wasn't coins or gems. It was jewelry. Necklaces of gold, bracelets studded with pearls, rings so heavy they slipped off his fingers. Each piece looked like it belonged in a palace, not in the hands of a poor fisherman. By now his breaths were short, shallow. His chest tightened with both excitement and dread. He knew one thing for certain. His life would never be the same after this moment. But what he didn't know yet was that this treasure wouldn't just change his life. It would change his entire village. Karim sat frozen in his boat, staring at the open suitcase as if it might vanish into thin air. His rough hands hovered over the gold, then pulled back. For years, he had dreamed of escaping the cycle of poverty. And here, fate had delivered enough wealth to make that dream possible 100 times over. But the longer he looked at it, the heavier the weight on his chest grew. What if he kept it all to himself? He could leave the village, move to the city, buy a big house, send his children to the best schools. No more hunger, no more sleepless nights, wondering how to pay for medicine or repairs on his leaking roof. Yet another thought tugged at him, faces of his neighbors. The widowed mother who borrowed rice from him last week, promising to return it, but knowing she couldn't. The old man whose roof had caved in during the last storm. The young boys who walked barefoot to school because their families couldn't afford shoes. This treasure could feed everyone. It could build a new market, fix the roads, even bring electricity to homes that had been dark for years. But then the darker side of human nature whispered in his mind. What if greed tore the village apart? What if fights broke out, or outsiders came to claim it? What if powerful men, the kind who ruled with money and threats, found out what he had discovered? The river's gentle waves rocked the boat, as if echoing his uncertainty. He closed the suitcase and pulled it close, his hands gripping the handle tightly. Sweat formed on his brow. This was bigger than him, bigger than his family. But what was the right thing to do? For hours, Karim wrestled with his thoughts. He rowed slowly back toward the shore, his decision still unsettled. All he knew was this: the treasure had to be hidden for now. Nobody could know until he was ready. As he dragged the suitcase into his shed that night, he whispered to himself, "This will not destroy us. It has to save us." But even as he said the words, he had no idea how quickly the secret would start to spread. By the next morning, whispers had begun. Someone had seen Karim heading to his shed late at night. A neighbor noticed him carrying a heavy bundle and wondered what could be so valuable. Rumors spread like wildfire, twisting and growing with each telling. Karim tried to keep a low profile, but curiosity was impossible to contain. One by one, neighbors began stopping by his small home, offering help with chores or asking casual questions about his sudden mysterious trips to the river. Karim smiled and deflected, but his heart raced with every knock on the door. It wasn't long before a few brave villagers followed him to the river under the pretense of fishing. That's when the truth began to emerge. Karim realized he could no longer hide what he had found. Karim gathered the village elders and led them to his shed. Slowly, he opened the suitcase in front of their astonished eyes. Gold coins gleamed in the morning sun, small gemstones sparkled, and rare artifacts lay stacked neatly. The air was thick with disbelief. The villagers were speechless. Many had never seen anything like it. But then a hush fell over the group as Karim spoke. "This treasure is not just for me," he said firmly. "It belongs to all of us. We've struggled long enough. This can change everything. Our homes, our schools, even the river that has given us so much." Some villagers were hesitant. Greed and fear lingered in their eyes. But Karim's sincerity was undeniable. Slowly, the elders nodded, signaling approval. One by one, the villagers stepped forward, offering ideas, plans, and suggestions for how the treasure could be used wisely. Over the next few months, the village underwent a remarkable transformation. Broken homes were repaired, a small clinic opened, and a school was rebuilt with proper supplies. Clean water pumps were installed along the river, and even the roads were fixed, making travel easier for everyone. Karim became a quiet hero. He never took more than he needed. He made sure that decisions were fair, that everyone had a voice, and that the treasure didn't become a source of conflict. The village, once struggling and forgotten, was thriving. People from neighboring towns came to see the changes. They were amazed at how a single discovery, combined with honesty and selflessness, could turn despair into hope. One evening, as the sun set over the river, Karim sat alone on his boat, looking out at the shimmering water. He thought about the moment he first opened that suitcase and the weight of the decision he had carried. He smiled quietly to himself. It wasn't just the treasure that had changed lives. It was the choice to use it wisely, to put the needs of others above his own. And in that moment, Karim knew something deeper. Sometimes, the greatest treasures are not gold or jewels, but the chance to make a difference, to lift an entire community from darkness into light.